Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. This episode is sponsored by Rimmel Greenhouse Systems, makers of quality greenhouse structures. Whether you're just getting started or buying your 10th tunnel, Rimmel has a structure to fit your needs. I've purchased and grown in Rimmel houses and would recommend them to everyone. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with yet another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And today my guest is Karen Washington, who is a farmer and activist. She is co-owner farmer at Rise and Root Farm in Chester, New York, an activist, food advocate. In 2010, co-founded Black Urban Growers, Bugs, an organization supporting growers in both urban and rural settings. In 2012, Ebony magazine voted her one of the 100 most influential African Americans in the country, and in 2014 was a recipient of the James Beard Leadership Award. Karen serves on the boards of the New York Botanical Gardens, Mary Mitchell Center, Soulfire Farm, and Black Farmer Fund. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. That was a long introduction.
You've done a lot. I mean, the list of awards is, whew. There's a lot going on there. You've been busy.
Very, very busy. So glad to be here.
So talk to me, how did you get into agriculture?
Yeah, that is a story I've been telling for years because my family was not into agriculture. My grandparents, immediate parents were not involved in agriculture. I just happened to, in 1985, happened to buy a house, had a backyard. I decided to grow some food. And it was the tomato that changed my world because my relationship to food was always that it was from a grocery store. My mom was a good cook.
Yeah.
Until I discovered that, wow, the taste was incredible. A tomato was actually red and not pink. It tasted incredible and it grew on a vine. And that sort of gave me the desire to want to grow everything. And coinciding with that, 3 years later, turning an empty lot into a community garden really expanded my passion and thirst for growing food.
So then you kind of developed doing more community gardens. And then what prompted you to start your farm?
So while I was working I lived in a low-income neighborhood in the Bronx. And so really got involved in advocacy and activism because by just being in that plot of land and growing food just wasn't enough because it really impacted so many social issues that was happening within my community, social issues around housing, no heat and hot water, social issues around environment, things with asthma, and of course, diet-related diseases. And so just working in that garden, in that small space, I always thought of one day, expanding. And so I had a chance meeting friends in New York City that were still working on social issues and social justice issues as I was. And we made a pact that one day, if we had the opportunity, we would farm together. And so that opportunity came in 2014 when I left my profession as a physical therapist to follow my dream, and was able with my 3 friends to get some land up in Chester, New York, to start the farm, Rise and Root Farm.
And how far north of the city is that?
It's from where I lived in the Bronx, an hour and 15 minutes. I tell people it's quicker to go from my house to the farm than it is from my house to Brooklyn.
Okay. Yes. And I've experienced traffic there, so I know what that's like.
Yes. Definitely.
Yes. So talk to me, being a physical therapist, you made that leap. Was that challenging? Did it take you a couple of years to make that decision?
Not at all. I mean, I love my job as a physical therapist. A lot of times I was able to get a lot of knowledge from my patients who were Black and Latinx, and they grew up on farms and gardens, and now they were succumbed to a food system that was killing them, type 2 diabetes, hypertension. And so I love my job, but it just came a point in time in my life where I wanted to follow my dreams. And I had the capability of putting in years and saving, that it was time for me at 2014, at the age of 60, to say, I've done my best,
Mhm.
and I want to explore that desire to grow food on a farm. And so it was easy for me to make that decision.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the Bronx and the neighborhood and just kind of what food insecurity there looks like.
Yes, so the Bronx is one of 62 counties in New York State.
Mhm.
And out of 62 counties in New York State, the Bronx ranks the most unhealthiest.
Wow.
High incidence of type 2 diabetes, hypertension, infant mortality, especially amongst communities of color,
Mm.
saturated with a food system, a subsidized food system that relies on a lot of food pantries and soup kitchens. The food is predominantly made up of fast food, junk food, and processed food.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's the food system that's out there, and it's really what you see in most low-income neighborhoods and neighborhoods of color throughout this country, that
Mm.
relies on this sort of subsidized charity-based food system that's out there, and that is unhealthy.
Yeah. And why is that?
Well, I say that it's this, people used to ask me, is the food system broken and does it need to be fixed? And at one time I used to believe that. I was drinking that Kool-Aid,
Yeah.
believing that, but then I started to look closer at the food system, and it's doing exactly what it is. It's a caste system. It's based on the color of one's skin,
Mm.
how much money you have, and where you live. And
Mhm.
so for me, the food system is the design. It's designed to keep people, especially people in color, succumb to this food system that's not healthy. And I
Yeah.
say that because being in the health profession, you could see how a lot of the illnesses and diet-related diseases was dealt with medication, and hospitalization. And
Yeah.
so you look at the system and how it's built whereby the hospital system
Yep.
and the pharmaceutical system is built on bodies, on a number of people. And so if you have people who are sick, you're making money off of them. You're making money off. Can you imagine if people were well, the pharmaceutical systems would go
Yeah.
out of business. The hospital institution would go out of business. So for me, I always felt it was a money making business, and that we were used as pawns to fuel that system.
Yeah, I can agree with you 100% on that. And I think with you look at some of the poorer neighborhoods, they're working so hard just to make do. They don't have the time to maybe go look at some of those books or go to find, fresher food where someone who's got a much more, they don't have to work that 60 hours a week or 2 or 3 jobs. They've just got more space in their life to start researching this stuff.
Not only that, sometimes there's this misinformation that, poor people don't want healthy food. Whereas, if you put poor people together in terms of the amount of money they bring into the system, they will buy, if they have the option to
Yeah.
buy fresh produce at a reasonable price, they would buy it. They
Yeah.
would buy it. So, but yet, if that's not available in their neighborhoods, and if the price is out of reach, then that's a problem. Because at the end of the day, we are in the United States, one of the wealthiest countries in the
Yes.
world, where we
Yeah.
waste enough and we grow enough food. So the question I always ask in the 21st century is, why is there still hunger,
Yeah.
poverty, and homelessness?
Yeah. And you're right. We live in the richest country, one of the richest, because I think there's some little tiny Baltic countries or something, which I think technically make more money. But I mean, like, America's always been known as the land of opportunity, or you'd be able to do what you want, but we still have this happening.
Yes, and I think that continues to fuel me to challenge the food system, because again, why are we still having the same problem in the 21st century? Why is it? And again, like I said, there is money and politics behind this food system that continues to fuel and continues to put food in a subsidized charity-based food system that, number one, makes people feel good because you're handing people food, but then at the same time, you're not tackling the problem with solutions. You just amplify and put a band-aid on the problem of poverty and hunger. And so for me, it's to challenge the food system to look at ways that we can end hunger and poverty. And for me, a lot of it is based on economic development, social capital, communal wealth, getting people jobs, training people in terms of be entrepreneurs. We're talking about not only food justice, but food sovereignty, to be able to control communities and food systems in such a way that benefits your community. And at the end, you're the one that dictating what types of food that you want to see, the types of growers that you want to see, and also the types of people growers that you want to be. Owning land is very, very critical when we talk about what wealth looks like.
So talk to me a little bit about that land piece, because Bronx is very highly populated. What opportunities are there, or is it very, very, very slim because of just so many houses?
Well, the thing about it is that, land in any municipality has political consequences. And I say that because you have to, right now in cities, you have to weigh green space with development. And so when I get a chance to speak to these new developers, these new planners, I say, when you're thinking about planning and developing housing, you need to also add green space to your infrastructure so that you can do a housing unit, but then you can also, within that housing unit, put on a rooftop garden, put in vertical garden, put in a greenhouse, put in open space, so that you're tackling both issues. You're tackling the demand for development, but also the demand for green space, which is really, really critical in urban areas, which are highly populated and whereby land is very limited.
Yeah. Is New York City sustainable?
In terms of what? When people say sustainable, they're looking at the fact that will growing food in urban spaces feed the masses? And I say no, it's not intended to do that. Why? No, it's not intended to feed the masses, especially if we're looking at the projection that by 2050 there'll be an additional 2 billion people on this planet, and most of those people will end up in urban areas. That's not practical. So I think it's not about techniques of growing food. Is how do we grow food more efficiently? We're always going to need the rural component of growing food, but I think in terms of urban agriculture, it gives people a chance to have that connection to land, have that control of the food that they want to see, that cultural experience that they might not be able to find in a grocery store, but that educational component that you never got. For me growing up, I never got my relationship to food and land from my ancestors. What was taught for me is to get away from the land, the slavery mentality that was always put into and drilled into my mind, until I realized how false that was, in the fact that my ancestors were brought here because of their knowledge of agriculture, and not because of their strength or because that they were ignorant.
So break that down a little bit, because I think that's something, I've read a couple of books that talks about that, where, and correct me if I'm wrong, that sometimes Afro-Americans have that, it's tough for them to get involved with agriculture because of that history there where they were forced to do it.
Yes. Well, the thing about it, if you're taught that history over and over again, of course you don't want to do that type of work. But if you take away that false narrative and you say, wait a second, you come from kings and queens. You have an agrarian DNA within your body, and that you were brought here because of your knowledge of agriculture. The seeds you brought in your head that you put down was the foundation for the food that the colonists were able to eat. The methods of irrigation and crop rotation, we brought the tools, agricultural tools, we brought here. And so when you break it down and you start re-educating people about their place in American agricultural history, it's totally different. Also, to get people to understand the power of land and how land at one time was in the hands of enslaved people as well as indigenous people, and how that land was taken away. And land at that time was very powerful. Land was built on wealth.
Yeah.
And so when you have the ability to give people access to land at a point in time in history, and that land is taken away from them, but yet certain people, namely whites, were able to build wealth on land, then you see the disparity that we often see when it comes to wealth inequality in this country.
Yeah. And I think obviously you look at some of the additional factors of lack of access to capital over the years in the South to Afro-Americans historically. That obviously was massively problematic. And then you look today of who owns the land and who doesn't.
Correct. And that's a conversation that a lot of people don't want to have. You all of a sudden you have these things coming up, about race and culture and not teaching critical race theory, and not teaching, having books in library that we have to ban and keep from our children, and not having hard conversations when it comes to race. And economics is absolutely crazy, but you know what? You just can't continue to silence the masses of people wanting to know the truth.
Yeah. And again, it's that history that we have to recognize so we don't repeat it. And maybe it's not that same, it's going to be repeat with the same peoples, but I think it works in cycles. And so different minorities maybe are being repeated with.
Yes, and which I'm, as I look with my vision of what this country will look like 10 to 20 years from now, this country will definitely be different in terms of the colorization of this country. And so when that happens, you never want to be able to, when people of color or when the country is colorized, to replicate a system of oppression. You never want to replicate the oppressor. So what do you learn from people who have the ability to put other humans in bondage, or to take people away from their land and take away people's language and stuff like that? You never want to, once you gain power and you learn from being oppressed, to bring those same qualities when you're trying to manufacture a new way of living. And so hopefully, as like you said, history has a tendency to repeat itself, but you don't want to take those bad things of oppression and making sure that you tend to, at the end, replicate those bad things.
Talk to me a little bit about some of the crops that were brought over from Africa, because I know that's a lot of things. Some people don't realize all the history there.
Yeah, so certain like the seed, like watermelon, people think watermelon. How about rice? I grew up thinking that, wait a second, rice was from Asia. African rice, rice was brought here. A lot of sorghum, a lot of cereals were brought here. So there's a wealth of information, and they used to say, when you look at the seed catalog, they will say like guinea peas or guinea bees, because they use the word guinea as saying that it was from Africa. Even the cocoa nut was brought from Africa. Cocoa nut, where you get Coca-Cola from. Hello. And so
interesting. Yeah.
So there's a lot of seeds, and not only medicinal seeds, but culinary seeds that were brought here from us that shaped this nation. And even the way we cook, the cuisines, the dishes that we make. When I watch these programs, I watch these barbecue programs, and I watch these culinary programs, and I don't see our faces, it just behooves me, because I'm saying, like, who was in the kitchen back in the day? Who making these dishes? You know what I'm saying? And so there's always this nuance about different dishes, but again, where is our place, not only in terms of food, growing food, but also in terms of culinary dishes as well.
Now, like okra, that's from Africa too, right?
Okra, yes. Okra, like I said, okra, sorghum, different types
Greens,
of
collards.
beans. I don't know if collards, but I don't know if collards was from Africa. I think it might have made its way from more of the Caribbean
Okay. Yeah.
diaspora, along with like callaloo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But definitely okra.
Yeah.
Definitely, and rice.
We grow a collard called, I think it's Southern yellow cabbage collard. I don't know if you've ever seen that variety, but the leaves are actually more of a yellowish, and it's so tender, because I've had the regular collards and stuff, but they just seem so thick. But these cabbage ones, the leaves are so thin and so tender, and we grow it in the winter typically here in Ohio. Yeah, so I love that variety. But okra,
Seeds.
I will. Yes, I will send you some seeds. Yes, let me put that down. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about, you've been involved in a lot of advocacy and a couple different programs you've worked. Talk to me about the Black urban growers.
Yes. So I went to a program back in 2008 called the Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food System. It's called CASFIS for short.
Yeah.
It was a 6-month program in Santa Cruz, California, learning how to grow organically. And one of the trips was, traveling various farms in Santa Cruz. And the question I would ask is like, where are the farmers that look like me? And so I did a project while I was there, because each of us had to do a project.
Yeah.
And my project was the plight of the Black farmer. And during the research, what I found out back then, this was 2010, I asked to look at the census. And what I found back then, that in 2010, there were 56,000 farmers. And out of those 56,000, only 113 were Black. So when I got back to New York, I reached out to my friends and I said, we have to start, let's do a conference that is Black centered, because for years you go to conferences, farming conferences and workshops, and you sit there in a sea of whiteness. You sit there and there may be hundreds to thousands of people that attend, but you sit there and you count on your hand how many people look like you. You look around, because as soon as you walk in a room as a Black person, you're looking to see how many people look like you. And so for years, you sit at these conferences and these workshops, which are white centered. The speakers are white, the workshops are white, and you say to yourself, how do you fit in? What is your relationship? How do you fit into the whole world of agriculture? And so we decided, you know what? We need to have our own conference, that speaks about our history, speaks about our relationship to food, to bring to the forefront Black scientists, Black farmers, Black people, anthropologists, people that are working within the system of food, and for young people to see them, to see people talk about what it was and how it is to grow food here, the challenges, but most of all, the success, and how to get people interested in agriculture. And at that time, we had over 500 people. Wow. 500 people showing up for the first time, listening to people talk about their own history and their own way of growing food, and mentioning so many people who have been at the forefront. Even today, when we talk about, regeneration, and all these sort of nuances, no one never mentions George Washington Carver. His name's never mentioned.
Yes. Yeah. And he was one of my
mentioned.
And when I was growing up, he was one of my idols, because, we read the books about all the things he created and how he would go back and, all the peanuts and the sweet potatoes. Yeah, I remember reading those books when I was 6, 7, 8, probably. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and subsequently we had it for the last consecutive consecutively until 2019 when COVID hit.
Mhm.
So we didn't have it. So hopefully this year we're back on track to
Mhm.
have it in a place where we will continue to have these conversations that we need to have here in America.
Mhm. Yeah. And so that then the Black Urban Growers, that's a conference, and then you guys do support work throughout the year.
Yes, definitely. So what we try to do is really to do networking,
Mhm.
to really get people who, come to us and ask for, especially around um, areas where they can find land or where they want uh, to grow. What are some organizations that are out there that are doing the work for them to do either Skillshare work, especially to find land, or to work on holding on to land. There's a big thing when it comes to heirs property,
Mhm.
of where so many Black families who don't have wills have been losing their land because of the fact that, again, it's the legal system
Yeah.
of ways that Black people never had the opportunity to write wills. And so as a result, a lot of the land that's out there has been stolen, taken away, or just lost because people have not been able to
Yeah.
pay taxes, or there's no connection because there's no will on who really owns it.
Well, and if there's no will, then it's much more expensive, much harder to actually make sure it stays in the family.
Right, because you have to get a
Yeah.
lawyer, you have to go to probate, and that's a cost that a lot of people are not able to do. However, again, this is a conversation that we need to have when it comes to the farm bill, changes
Mhm.
that need to be made so that people who have documents or who are on the land can show without a will that that family is owning that land and not having that land taken away, and finding
Yeah.
steps that make it feasible for them to to continue to keep that land.
So you mentioned the farm bill too, because that's coming up here shortly, a rewrite of that, correct?
Yeah, so there's two things, we're still trying to work on debt relief.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been out there, and again, the challenges, and I just don't understand, again, the challenges when it comes to helping Black farmers is always race based. And so now you have a group of farmers that's trying to say, this is reversal racial discrimination. And how can that be when white farmers own 98% of land?
Yeah.
And you have 1% of people that are trying to hold on to that land and trying to get out of debt. And you're saying is reverse discrimination. So I don't know how that holds up. And then the Black Farmer Act that we're trying to, again, push to provide resources so that there's a way for young people to learn how to farm. There's provisions so people have access to land. And so these are things that you want to see in a farm bill. You want to see ways that can really encourage the next generation of farmers to be more diverse. But that
Mhm.
takes training, that takes capital, that takes ways to doing that. And then also when it comes to USDA grants, they have to make it easy. You have to have some sort of
Yeah.
degree,
Pretty
to
much.
sit down and go through a 20-page
Yeah.
application that doesn't make sense to the people that are trying to do the work.
Yeah. Trust me, it's tough. I mean, we got a one of the smaller, I forget, it's the beginning farmer program. And it was like 12 or 14 different documents. And he was like, well, yeah, it's been a lot easier. And I'm like, well, it's still very hard. And
Right.
I've been in agriculture 17 years, so I should be able to figure this out a lot quicker. And it still, for me, was very challenging.
Right.
So for someone who's only a couple of years in, I can't imagine the challenges it is to put that all together. So now, from what I understand, there was some debt relief in the last one, or am I thinking about something different?
Well, if you're talking about the Pickford suit, are you talking about Pickford? Because there's Pickford 1 and Pickford 2. So Pickford 1 and Pickford 2 is when they found that the USDA had discriminatory practices
Yes.
that
Yeah.
prevented farmers with debt relief because of the fact that many of them were trying to get loans and could not get loans.
They were turned
And
down.
so there was provision that, that made for farmers to get some sort of compensation. So that
Yeah.
was Pickford 1. And then they did Pickford 2 because, again, it didn't reach out to many of the farmers that had passed on, or many of the farmers that didn't have opportunity to fill
Yeah.
that out. But again, it's taken a lot of time and energy for farmers to continue to get that money. And then what I heard is that once you get that money, you got to pay taxes on that money. Come on, for really? You're giving debt relief, and then you turn around and say, well, that's money given to you and you got to pay taxes on it.
That's ridiculous. Yes.
Well, but you know what? That's what the system is. And that's why changes have to be made. Changes have to be made.
Absolutely. Now, talk to us a little bit about your farm, Rise and Root Farm. You guys have a couple different areas that you focus on. Talk to us about the plants that you raise.
Yeah, so we all come from community gardens in New York City. And so we have had the opportunity, this is our third year, to really plant the starts for many of the community gardens in New York City. So a lot of stuff that people, we know we grow in cities that's viable is, we grow the greens, we grow the collards, we grow the kale, we grow tomatoes is a big thing that we grow, tomatoes, so many different types of herbs. So Rise and Root Farm, we pride ourselves, first of all, in terms of food and social justice. We are a for-profit farm. We're not a nonprofit farm. We're a for-profit farm. 2 of us are people of color. 3 of us are LGBTQ women. And so we bring that sort of those values to the work that we do. We consider ourselves not sort of owners in the sense of owning things, but we pride ourselves in being stewards of the land. We know we're on the land of the Napi people. We make sure that we get people that come to our farm, because we are in Orange County. We're on the Black Dirt region. So what does that mean? That means that there's 40% organic matter in our soil. Our soil is crazy. We grow the best vegetables. We also grow the best weeds. But yet we have to be mindful of that, the blessing that we have when it comes to that soil, that we don't, because agriculture can be very extractive, and we have to make sure that whatever we take out of that soil, that we put back into that soil. And so things that grow really well, first of all, it was a climate in terms of soil fertility to grow onions. And so but we don't grow a lot of onions. We do a lot of growing now in high tunnels. And I say that because there's a short window in upstate New York in terms of growing year round. And so by growing vegetables in high tunnels, so we grow different types of tomatoes, and we grow basil, and we grow greens all year round. And so we really had to find what is our niche as a 3-acre farm that does a lot of hands-on. We just have a walk behind tractor. So a lot of our work is manual labor. What is it that we can grow that can develop into an income? And so, like I said, we grow a lot of heirloom tomatoes, a lot of culinary and medicinal herbs. What we grow for the city, like I said, we grow greens, we grow herbs, we grow peppers, we grow squash, we grow beets, carrots, you name it, stuff that's hardy and nutritious that we grow for the people in New York City. But then also we have community days where we have people come up and take a look at the practices that we do when it comes to the hands-on practices that we do when it comes to putting seeds in the ground and weeding and taking care of the plants in a way that's very, very holistic and very intentional. Again, being stewards of the land, making sure that, our hands are in the soil, our feet in the soil, it's just a way of giving back and really paying attention to the amount of water that we use, the type of plants that we grow. And then, at the end of the day, just sitting back and just giving the universe and the environment, the thanks, to be able to do the work that we do. I think a lot of it is, for me, is very spiritual, to be on that land and to be having the gift to be able to do that. I find that very special for me.
Yeah. Now you do some value adding on the farm too, from your Instagram.
Yes. Yes, we've done that in the past. We used to do a lot of a work around kraut.
Okay.
Doing a lot of kraut. And so we've curtailed that somewhat because of the fact that now we've gone from growing on 2 acres of land now to 3 acres of land. But we want to start doing the value added stuff again, whereby we've done a lot of this different types of sauerkraut, different types of peppers, different types of medicinal and culinary herbs that we will continue to do, because now we're thinking about, and we have in the past, of now, and adding more people to our farm. Whereas before, when we first started, we were paying ourselves $1 an hour. Then it went up to $3 an hour. Then it went up to $8 an hour. Now we're paying ourselves $12 an hour.
Yeah.
So yes.
Okay, because I'm looking at that one. You did the flower pops, which we've done in the past. They've never looked as.
That's our new thing. Yes, that's our new thing.
Yeah, we tried those this summer, and we could never make it quite work. It's really tricky getting that temperature right before you don't. It's too hot. It makes the flowers. Anyway, do you have any tricks?
But you know what? You have to speak to Michaela, because Michaela is the culinary wizard. Let me tell you something. So we said, let's sort of test the flower lollipops. It was such a great hit. It was such, as a matter of fact, I brought some here. They sent me some for Christmas to give out to my family here. And she got it right. So I'm not going to give away her trade secret.
Okay. All right.
But,
it's possible.
The pops and the different flavors of the pops.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. The orange, the lemon. Yes. So we're going to do more of those. Definitely.
Nice. And I also like the loofah. That's another cool thing, which I think is just
loofah. Yes. So you have me bringing me up to I'm thinking about, yes. So those things, the pops and a loofah, are definitely things that we try to do for the first time, 2021. Okay. And has been a huge success. So yeah, the loofah and the pops are the two things. Again, trying to get it right, trying to find ways to, first of all, take off that hard outer shell of loofah.
Yes.
And then literally you have to bang it and knock it to open up the cell that's inside, and then having the temperature to try to dry it, to take out the inner seeds and to dry it.
Yep.
And to make sure that it's at a temperature where it doesn't become moldy, but then just right. So, and then we were able to really to give it away as gifts and to sell it. So those are the two things that we are doing now. But we also want to think about bringing back the kraut and the peppers that we've done in the past, and the medicinal and culinary herbs we've done in the past. But we figured, let's try these two things, the pops and the loofah, and so far they've been a hit.
Very cool. Talk to us a little bit about your marketing, because you sell locally and in the city.
Yes, so we have 3 markets. So we have, and they all vary in price, and also clientele. So we have a high-end market, which is the Union Square Market, which is down in Lower Manhattan, down Union Square, 14th Street. We're on 16th Street.
Yep.
Which is more high-end. And then more middle class end is the Kingston Market, which we just started a couple of years ago. And so that's more middle. And then we have the Bronx Market that I started back in 2004, which is more of a lower income bracket.
Okay.
But all three markets get the same produce. The price varies, but again, even in our low income market, we have there's a cost and value of food.
Yeah.
And I say that because, and I'm telling this to farmers that are out there that are thinking about or have a hesitant of going into low income neighborhoods, because there's an educational component that needs to be done. And I say that because when you're surrounded by a charity-based subsidized food system where most of people get their food free,
Yeah.
from food pantries and soup kitchens, you have to sort of buck that system and educate the clientele that you have that there's a price and there's a cost in the food. I'm the farmer. I'm bringing the food down. There's a cost in me buying the seeds. There's a cost in labor. There's a cost in traveling, cost in gas, and a cost that I have to take on in order to feed my family. So this is why my carrots or my beets are $2 a bunch versus what you might see in the store, 79 cents or 99 cents. This cost and value. And then having that conversation of communities that wants to support me as a farmer of color, they will say, you know what, I get it. I'm going to purchase this, or I get it, but at this point in time, I don't have the money. But still, I had that conversation within my own people, because it's a conversation that farmers don't have, especially when they see farmers of color and they're interested in what we grow, making that connection and that commitment.
Yes.
That I'm here because you need me to be here. And I need you to support me by paying, if it's, through cash, if it's through coupons, whatever, but to make that sort of shout out to education, which is the key, to tell people that there's a cost and a value of what I'm bringing down, and you have to pay for it.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge thing and I'm glad you just brought that up, because you're right. These lower income neighborhoods have so much subsidized that farmers, when they go in, I think a lot of it's a disconnect. Like, well, I don't even think I'm going to sell anything because they get it for free. But as you said earlier, they do looking for that fresh product because they can't get it with a lot of the free stuff. It's a lot harder, or the quality is just not there.
Right. And it's also about building relationships.
Yeah.
You just can't, you're a farmer. In order for you to sell out with your product, in order for you to be a good farmer, it's about building relationships. People know off the bat if you're just going there just for the money.
Yeah.
You have to go there and you have to establish a relationship to your customer so that they can keep coming back. They look forward to, like, if you're not there, they're wondering, like, wait a second, why aren't you there? We missed you. So it's not about only growing food, but building relationships within communities so that, there's this sort of reciprocity in that, I'm growing for you, and in turn, you're helping me by buying my product. And so again, having the farm that we have, it's about not only growing food, but building relationships, which is really intentional on our success.
Yeah. And now you don't do anything like CSA, community supported agriculture, you're just farmers markets?
Right, just farmers markets. But then we do have a strong educational component whereby we do a lot of what is called agritourism.
Okay.
Where we have visitors, we have schools, we have colleges that come, and so they pay a price for that sort of agritourism component that we have, which is really, really good and really beneficial because people want to know what we're doing, want to learn from that. And again, that's
another income stream for you. So that's interesting. The education you do that way, is it very specific workshops, let's say, like growing herbs, or is it more of a general farm tour?
It's more of a general farm tour, but then also they get a chance to get their hands dirty and they ask questions.
Okay.
And a lot of them want to learn, want to know, like what it took for us to be on a farm. What was our experience? What were some of the pitfalls? What is the advice? And what is food justice and what does food sovereignty look like? What is it? What is our experience? Because a lot of a lot of colleges and high schools are now having curriculums around food justice
Yeah.
and food sovereignty. And so and food systems, so the curriculum. And so a lot of them want to come out and meet farmers to discuss, ways of growing and different alternatives of growing food, and seeing women farmers, and then seeing women of color farmers, and seeing
Yeah.
LGBTQ farmers. We run the gamut. So
You're really blowing their mind.
yes, and people want to find ways where they can fit in.
Yes, yes. But also because, yeah, some of those other people feel marginalized to be able to connect with you, and and you're making it happen.
Correct. Definitely. Showing up.
Talk to us about the Black Farmer Fund.
Yeah, the Black Farmer Fund. I'm just so proud of that. I'm so proud because it happened at an incident at Stone Barns. So
Yes.
Incident at Stone Barns, which something that was difficult to comprehend turned into something, the Black Farmer Fund. And I say that because, we had a group we commandeered their library and just sat there with Black folks and people of color just to talk about what is the urgency that we need. And it all came down to capital.
Yeah.
Capital is, farm, you need to start any business, you need money. And for so long, we have always had our hands out.
Yeah.
Always our hands out. And so we started to talk about what would it look like to have an economy that has our money, our voices, our control. And so we started to come together to talk about what would a Black Farmer Fund look like? What would it entail? What would be its mission, its value? And so we put our story out there to the universe. This is a fund that wants to help Black farmers in New York State, because we didn't want to be broad-based.
Okay.
In New York State, to help a farming economy that, again, 57,000 farmers in New York State, only 139 are Black. So what does that mean in terms of the economy of Black farmers and Black business not getting any sort of money? And what does it mean to the economy when people are talking about diversity and inclusion and food justice and food sovereignty, when you have a race of people that are not even being included? When it comes to land use, when it comes to wealth use, they're not even there. And so putting that out into the universe and asking for people to support that work, the work that we want to help Black farmers and Black businesses with startup capital so that they can be self-sufficient and self-reliant. Who wouldn't want to put money to help that? Get people out of poverty, get them off those lines, getting farmers so that they can come into communities of color and people can see people that look like them, farmers that look like them. But not only to support Black businesses and Black startups, but let's support ways whereby we can have that educational component. We could talk about, what does social capital, communal wealth look like? What does it look like to have to get people out of debt? What does it look like to be able to have people invest in the community? What does it look like for people to talk about investing in food systems that produces ownership of businesses? Having that conversation, and yet sitting down and having the decision on where that money is going and then who should get that money in the hands of the community that they work in, that they live in, that they are the ones that are making that decision-making power. And so we're going into our third year. We started the pilot program last year. We gave out the money. And so we are on track. We, as a matter of fact, just got off the phone because we'll have a meeting, like a check-in meeting in March, just to see how those 8 farm businesses and farms are doing, and start really having those hard conversations around building wealth within the Black community, which for so long has not even happened. In my community, is always, we're going to sign you up. Here's and there is food pantry, soup kitchen. Let's just sign you up for SNAP. And it's like, where is the urgency to start thinking about building social capital and communal wealth within those communities, especially those marginalized communities have been on the outside, looking in and trying to have access to land and trying to have access to capital and trying to just have that opportunity, that opportunity to do what they want to do.
Yeah. Now you guys do a mix of grants and loans, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is really, really important because, again, how do you navigate a loan because for so long it's been so hard to for the Black community, Black farmers and businesses to get loans with such high interest. The first thing, you walk into a bank, you walk into any lending institution, what's the first thing they want to see? Before you can even talk, they don't want to hear your story. What's your credit?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So what's your business plan? Show us your business plan, your credit. Not that, you're trying to grow food, help grow food. We want to see your business plan and your credit. And if your credit is bad, we can help you. However, we want your firstborn, maybe your secondborn, and then we're going to add on 20% interest.
And then we want your arm too, your right and left arm.
And so the system is there for you to fail, for you to default. And so trying to, again, provide grants, but also provide loans and walk people through that process of a business taking on loans, looking at their infrastructure, how are they balancing their books, where is that back office that they need to make sure that they're making payments on time, what they, that they're not defaulting, where is it along the loan that there might be difficulty in, because as a farm, this, so at farm, there's highs and lows. There are ways during the farm season where production is great and you're making that money, you're making those bill payments. And then there's that lull where you're not doing anything. It's the end of the season. You're not doing anything. So, and how do you build the structure within that loan that takes that into consideration? Because a bank, they don't care. You got to make those monthly payments. They're not going to say, well, hey, so it's now November, you're not working. So, you can miss a payment. No, you can't. We want that payment. They don't want to hear the story. And so, again, putting more a human aspect to the fund is great, is great. Holding hands along that process to make sure that when there's bumps along the way, that there are people there that can help you get through those hard times and listen and be there and be supportive.
So what kind of things do you look for, like when you're figuring out who to fund for this?
Well, they have to meet certain criteria, again, looking at some of the ways that, we want to make sure that they keep the interests of the community at heart.
Okay.
That they're going to give back to the community, that they take pride in the environment and how they grow stuff, how they grow and how intentional they are when it comes to environment. What are their ways of thinking about, once they're on their feet, giving back into the community is really, really important. How do they look in terms of expanding? If they're going to expand, are they going to reach out to people in the community to help with that expansion? Where does the money go to? At the end, where is the money being invested? Is it being invested back into the business and back into the community? So there's certain criteria that we're looking at. And then we want to hear people's stories. We want to hear people's stories like, okay, what is it you want to do differently? What is it that we're missing? What is it that we can help you to, so that your business can be sustainable, which is really, really important. What are we missing? What have you seen in the past that has made it difficult for you to get a loan or to run a business? Also, we definitely encourage mentorship, really finding, especially those startups that are really new or that need help, so providing them with a mentor that help them with management. A lot of us know how to grow food, but we don't know how to manage our finances.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at ways that we can sort of bring in a mentor to help them, but then, trying to find ways that they can be successful is really, really important, and giving them those tools.
Yeah, and I'm actually here on that site, and you have the 8 recipients, the pilot cohort, which is cool to look at the stories of what all those farms are doing. Everything from is it CBD even?
CBD, yes.
Yeah, man. So yeah, quite the diversity here. I think an orchard, small orchard right there.
Farmer David.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool to see all that. What would you say to someone who's just getting into farming? What kind of message would you give them?
Follow, you know what? I always tell people, you have a dream, put it out to the universe. Put it out to the universe, because the only reason why we have the land that we have is that I happen to be sitting on a tour bus.
Okay.
I had a conversation with someone, said, asked me what I did, and I told them, me and my friends were looking for land, gave me a phone number, took that phone number and called. So your hopes and dreams, put it out so that people can hear it. And you might find someone that says, wait a second, I know this person, I can help you. But if you keep your hopes and dreams inside, then it's never going to happen. So that's my advice, especially to young people.
Yeah. Yeah. What question do you wish I asked that I didn't?
What am I besides a farmer?
Yeah, tell us.
So, yes. So I happen to be a mother of 2 incredible children. So my daughter is Dr. Kendra Washington Bass, who is an educator. It works here at Gwinnett County School System, teaching assistant principals to become principals. I'm proud of her. She went to Notre Dame. And so she's doing a lot of recruitment for students that want to go to Notre Dame. My son works for the health department. He is the director of food safety.
Oh,
so I'm proud of him. And my 2 grandchildren, my grandson Julian, does a lot of work around graphics. So he has this sort of TikTok thing. He has a project. He works with Disney and Paramount. He's out there doing really, really well in the business. And then my other grandson is attending Mercer College in engineering. So yeah, so I'm a mother and a grandmother, and I'm proud of all my children. So
yeah, that Disney gig sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
Yeah, that I've respected that company as very creative. The amount of creativity there is just very interesting to see what they come up with. So what does the future look like for you?
Well, like I said, I made the transition, so I live in Georgia. I'm trying to take care of myself in terms of self-care, even though I'll still be farming up in Chester, New York. I just bought a tiny house. I'll be up there, Chester, New York, for the next 3 years. But I've been asked to write a book, and so I'm trying to find some times to do that. I'm going to do a project with my daughter, a podcast in the future with my daughter. She's coming out with her book in leadership that should be
very
out
cool
sometime this year. But I want to travel. I want to meet people. I want to enjoy life. There's so much things that you want to do. I never want to say woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I'm having the time of my life here, being in Georgia, and just resting and being able to set a time where I can, be with family and friends. I think what COVID has really taught me and so many other people how important family is, family and friends, and that this virus took that away from a lot of people. And so I want to cherish my family. I want to cherish my friends. I want to cherish my health. all those things of the healthcare professional, I can see it can be going in an instant. So that's my future. And my future is to continue to knock down doors and knock down barriers, and be there as a mentor for the next generation of people that are coming up. Be there for them to give them advice and support.
Absolutely. Well, that is a wonderful vision. And if you ever do come to Ohio, feel free to look us up. Make sure you do look us up. We'd love to have you visit. So,
yeah, thank you so much. I've been there one time when Women, Food, and Agriculture Network had their conference at one time in Ohio, and I saw rows and rows of corn.
There's a lot of corn. Yes. We actually have an urban farm, so we're within the city limits.
Okay, that's good. So maybe I'll come back and see that instead of rows
corn.
And rows of corn.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time, Karen. Very privileged to have you on the podcast and share your wisdom and your vision. It's, again, incredible what you've done, and just the vision and the leadership you've shown over the last decades to move the movement forward.
Thank you so much for having me, and peace be with you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
This episode is sponsored by Rimmel Greenhouse Systems, makers of quality greenhouse structures. Whether you're just getting started or buying your 10th tunnel, Rimmel has a structure to fit your needs. I've purchased and grown in Rimmel houses and would recommend them to everyone. So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.